So, guys, I do want to talk about AEW, and I do want to talk about the women's Blood and Guts match, and also the tag team match. And I do want to say that it is a bit of a bailout for AEW, and it ultimately comes down to what AEW wants to do. Do they want to really just do things like, and as off the mic ropes is kind of saying, like, does this really turn into something where they're like, okay, you know what, we're just going to have these shock value matches, or are we going to use it for its intended purpose, which is to rebuild the women's division? Because quite honestly, and as people do talk about more about Mercedes than Tony Storm, Mercedes and Tony Storm and Athena are detrimental to the women's division, because you have Athena as a over 1,000-day champion, and it's almost like, can you graduate her to the main roster? Can you have somebody else hold the title in Ring of Honor? Because part of having long title reigns mean that you can't find somebody else really to take to pass to pass it off to, and then it's ultimately like when Ring of Honor pay-per-views come along. I think most people are interested in Bandito right now. And before then, there was really no interest outside of liking Ring of Honor and AEW diehard. There's really a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people were just there to see Athena really. So she's not like a Hogan or whatever, where the draw is of her really. So that's why she's an issue. She needs to move on to greener pastures. And then also you look at Tony Storm, and she's been on repeat mode with this sexual comedy. So again, it becomes a little bit like Tom Conway Twitty and Family Guy. It becomes a gag, it becomes repetitive. Or just like how in South Park they always rip on Trump right now. It's a bit of like repeat mode. And then also with Mercedes, like this whole entire, now she's a 9-belt person. They may do something where they may have Statlander lose, or they may have Mercedes take a woman like Marina Shafir and then hold the tag team belt, so you'll have Mercedes 11 belts or something like that really. Like you need to kind of say to yourself, okay, you can't just have people monopolize the division. Remember what happened in TNA wrestling with the Main Event Mafia, where they kind of won everything. Or you look at like how a lot of the former WCW people, like they would be in the TNA Hall of Fame first, like Sting and the Dudleys and Kurt Angle versus other people. So eventually people are going to really catch on and be like, okay, I don't really care about this women's division. I don't really care about that, because it's really about Mercedes, number one, number two, Tony Storm, and then number three, it's Athena, really. So part of that is a woman blood and guts match, because you take 10 women, then you say, hey, you know what, we're going to build a division around them. Hey, we're going to make them on the caliber of these other women. And hey, we're going to make these people really interesting. And it's like what I've said, and I'll say before and I'll say it again. They need to learn from the Royal Rumble. They need to learn from the Elimination Chamber. They need to learn from when Money in the Bank was on WrestleMania, because what they did, what WWE did in all these three shows, was that they took a bunch of wrestlers, and then you knew that they were going to be successful the next year. Like, for example, I remember like Jeff Hardy, I think in 2007 or whatever, he was in the he was in the Royal Rumble. No, he was in the Money in the Bank, and then 2008 was his big year, really. And then also I've seen like people like, like there's been many times in the Royal Rumble where you have somebody get close to winning and then they don't win, or somebody have a good performance like a Drew McIntyre or a few other people, and it's almost like, okay, now you're exciting the crowd, and then they kind of see this person grow within the next year and stuff like that. Like I know with the Royal Rumble next year, they got to have some of the Samoan guys, like Solo Sikoa. They also have to have some people, like if you're going to bring Joe Hendry to WWE, or if you're going to like have Braun Breaker like dominate a lot of people, you have to kind of do something where you have to make the people who dominate or stand out, your next generation, your next year of talent, really. So and WWE more than likely will do that because they're smart enough to do that. But what you're going to see with AEW with the blood and guts, and I think a lot of people are worrying about, like off the mic show, is that you may say, okay, they're going to do a bunch of violent, shocking, hardcore shit, and then they're going to just have nothing to do with these ladies afterwards, really. And that's not what they should do. There should be, the key word, the hydrogen bomb for AEW is epilogue. Epilogue means, what do you do after that? So you have Tekla and Queen Aminata. What would happen if they're fighting and then they knock each other out, really? And then you have like 4 other women fight. Then Tekla and Queen Aminata keep like going at it. Or you have something where Aminata pins Tekla, and then Tekla, the backstory of Tekla is that she got fired from a company for attacking like the president. So what would happen if she got mad? She throws a chair in the direction of Tony Khan, hits a security guard, almost Tony, and he's like, okay, you crazy bitch, I'm gonna punish you. So we're gonna have like a street fight in Newark, New Jersey, you and Queen Aminata, and the winner of that's going to face Mercedes Chris Statlander at the World's End, really. And this is kind of the issue. That's not that hard. I just spitballed an idea of 3 matches. Wrestle Dream, you have the women, then you have at Full Gear, Queen Aminata and Tekla fighting each other. And I said something about like Tekla, and her backstory. And then you have Queen Aminata, who wants to be like the first African-born women's champion. They have a match, and then at Wrestle Dream, you have Chris Statlander versus Queen Aminata, really. So I gave you just like 3 months just by spitballing of matches you can have, really. Or you can do something like you could have on the women's team, on the villain team, you can have Bozilla debut. You can have Megan Bayne and Bozilla, and then you can have a team of Bozilla and Megan Bayne, really. Like, who's going to beat these women? Then you could do something like you can have like Harley Cameron in this, and then she can kind of cut a promo and saying, hey, you know what? I always joke around, but sometimes bitches got to get serious. And then she kind of can show you both sides of her character, that she can be a serious, this means a lot to me, this is in my heart type of person. And then she can also kind of have that comical role when it's appropriate, really. Like, she can kind of go into that John Cena role of when she can cut the shit and be serious, she can be serious. Or instead of being like Max Caster, where Max Caster has a hard time cutting off the comedy, really. Or like I say about Kyle Fletcher, he has a hard time with that as well, really. So I just think that there's a lot of ways that this could be a bailout for AEW if it's done right. It can lead to so many future matches, and it's not that fucking hard. And also too, you look at the women and you look at their personalities, you introduce them to the audience, and then you kind of say, and then as I said, the big thing is Wembley Stadium. You have 90,000 people, and one thing that WWE can do, and this is how they're going to kill AEW, is that they do something like say, okay, Wembley Stadium has 90,000 people, we're going to buy the O2 Center, so that way if they don't draw that well at Wembley Stadium, they can't go to O2, really. And then on top of that, what will happen is then you can have like show versus show on the biggest weekend of the year with AEW, really. But as I said, the way for AEW, the biggest counterattack they can do with WWE is build new stars, is to rebuild divisions, look at their problems, rebuild it. And one of the big problems is the women's division. So the Blood and Guts match can be the bailout if they use it to build 10 women, if they showcase it that well, really. Like, honestly, this is going to determine a lot. It's just like with the Texas Death Match and having Hangman win. This is going to be one of these things where it can elevate AEW to a big level, or this can kind of be part of, okay, well, this is a bailout and they can fuck up on their bailout. Like, I remember like they went downhill a little bit after they made Moxley the champion at Wrestle Dream last year. I think 2 years ago, they weren't doing that well after they did the Devil storyline, and their bailout was Sting's retirement, because a lot of people went to that pay-per-view. I think they did 16,000 people, but that was a show where that was a bailout. They could have just set up a lot of new shit. And part of the Women's Blood and Guts is that's a bailout for AEW. There's a lot of people who want to see it. There will be a lot of people talking about it. They'll be like, hey, you know what, WWE, they don't have their women do shit like this, really. Hey, you know what, we can kind of set up some things, really. And while they're having that match, really, I think a lot of people are talking about the women's division and TNA wrestling, like the tag team division. Like, honestly, Tony Khan should have a lot of people watch videos of the TNA wrestling division, of the tag team division. They should be watching some classic videos on the knockout divisions, starting with like Gail Kim and Awesome Kong. They should write down ideas and just say, what can we do to kind of better and make extensions of that? Like really, like as I said, that ultimately the Blood and Guts, if it's done well, it could be a bailout for the women's division. And that's also very true for the tag team titles. You have so many women on the roster, and you have so many women that you're not utilizing, like Nyla Rose, really. So there does come to a point where you have to realize what you can do, what you have, and ultimately what you can build, really. And as I said, and definitely, as I said, it's not about hardcore shocking shit, really. It's about saying we have a match where people can care about, we can put all the hype into it, we can put all the story into it, and then we can also really think about an epilogue. Like, really, it's figure out your 10 people and say, hey, you know what, Queen Aminata, here's 10 things we can do with her from now until Wrestle Dream, and from now to Wembley Stadium. Here's 10 things we can do with Tekla now to Wembley Stadium. Here's 10 things we can do with Will Nightingale now into Wembley Stadium. And it's not that fucking hard, really. It's not that fucking hard. And ultimately, I would say too, if they do have it at Blood and Guts, and then they have the writers' room, and then people can't figure out what to do with these women the next 10 months, really, or even like write down a 10 bullet outline. A B C D E F G H I J K L. You had to take those people and fire them because it's not that fucking hard, really. Use this to reset the women's division. Are you guys going to do that? Or is this going to be like a match that's going to have some hype and there's going to be no epilogue and then you're on to the next thing? And that shouldn't be it. So ultimately, this Blood and Guts match can be a bailout for AEW and reset the women's division. But it comes down to execution and, importantly, epilogue.